Jeff Ogilvy survives wing foot.
Now the moment Aaron Badley has waited for.
Gary Webb is the 5-time Australian Open champion.
Golf at its best by one of the best in golf, Peter Thompson.
Stand in front of a crowd like this today and win the PGA Championship is pretty special.
He's done it at last. Greg Norman.
Matt Jones gets his name on the Stonehaven Cup.
Leishman to 11 under. Now we've got a new leader, kids.
There it is! Adam Scott. A life changer. Coming up next, you have unrestricted access to golf across Australia and the world. Thanks to Golf Australia, we're going inside the ropes. G'day everybody and welcome to Inside the Ropes episode number 19. Great to have you with us on another, well this is a genuinely huge week in the world of golf. They generally are, and Hazy, as I say hello to you again, this is a very, very big week for those of us who believe that the President's Cup should be a thing.
Come on, you internationals. Never thought I'd say that, Andy. Come on, you internationals. Doesn't sort of roll off the tongue, but let's hopefully we can say that on Monday morning our time.
Let's hope so.
It's a massive week on some, like we say that regularly, but on so many fronts. There's great junior golf, there's great senior golf, there's great women's, men's, you name it. It's going on this week. It's all happening.
It is, and there's a lot to talk about. David Graham's going to join us on the road to the Open, of course, a little bit later on the show. Alison Whitaker wasn't part of the David Graham interview, and we'll explain what happened then. You've been all over the place, Al, and we haven't seen you for too long, and it's lovely to see you again.
It is so good to be back, guys. I don't know about the people at home, but I've been in fetal position seeing all by myself in various parts of the world, wishing I was back here on Inside the Ropes and feeling a little out of the loop, to be honest with you. So at least I can tune in and listen when I'm in transit.
Well, what have you been doing? Why haven't you been here? Where you've been all over? Ever since the week leading into the Solheim Cup, I reckon it was. Have we seen you since then? Or maybe,
no.
So
we nearly saw her. She got caught on the plane one day.
That's right. You were supposed to be here, yeah.
I was meant to be here, and if I could have got off the plane and swam, I probably would have been quicker, to be honest with you. But, it's been a pretty solid couple of weeks, really, out on the road. So I was in Spain last week, did a couple of instructionals and stuff with Anna Whiteley for Golfing World, which will be coming out soon. I believe they're hitting screens at the moment, which is troubling because I haven't seen them. So that's always absolutely terrifying when they do the edit and don't show you. But, Solheim Cup was pretty massive, obviously, for the women's game. Also, I got thrown a curveball and was told that I was leading the Solheim Cup on the Tuesday morning before the Friday start. So that was great for prep. Given that I was in there leading Laura Davies and Mickey Walker, so two of the best in the European game. So that meant a couple of sleepless nights. But they said I'd do half an hour, and I ended up doing 5 hours a day. So, yeah.
How did the dame take that?
It was actually really good, to be honest with you. I think when you've got a lead that is a golfer, sometimes the trouble is that you have too in-depth golf chats and you don't necessarily think about the people that are sitting at home that don't know that much, especially when you talk about swing positions and that kind of thing. So it was something to be wary of, but I think some of the educated golf chats that we did have about how to play shots, about how we've both looked at other players in the game and that kind of thing from two very different perspectives, has been, I think that was a really positive thing. I hope we see more of it going forward, to be honest with you. I love working with Laura. She's hilarious. At one point in time, I thought we were going to get booted off because I looked at her and I said, I don't think Europe's going to win the golf, but they always win the party. And she said, when you lose, there's always booze. And I was like, ad break! Can't do an ad break! So just classic Laura. So I was absolutely lapping it up.
Well, it's good to have you back. And there's a couple of things in particular. One in particular, we didn't get to speak to either Hazy or Clates last week about the impact of Maher and the way they said farewell to her at the end of her Evian, her final tournament, her final major. And I'll kind of get your thoughts on her contribution, what she's meant to the women's game in particular a little bit later on in the show. We probably need to kick it off with the President's Cup, which, depending on when you're listening to the program, is either about to kick off or has teed it up. How keen are we on this? I mean, does it go without saying that we as fans of the game
automatically enthuse about the President's Cup? Because there's a lot of crowbarring of this into the mainframe, and there's a push, and I'm not sure what sort of anticipation amongst the general sports loving community of, say, a country like Australia there is for the President's Cup, but it's automatic, isn't it, that we love it?
I think if you rust it on, you're into it, but I don't think it's a fait accompli for the average really interested sports fan who takes notice of other key golf things, that they're on board with a flag they don't recognise. There's no anthem. It happens every time it's in North America. Anyhow, it happens in grand final week. It's an awkward thing sometimes to wrap your head around and get as enthused as I hopefully sound about it, because I'm pumped for it. But I don't think it's it's not the Ryder Cup yet. Clearly, it's not even the America's Cup in terms of national conscience. So, or used to be anyhow, America's Cup. That's completely off the radar, but that's another podcast.
Do you think the record of the internationals plays a big part in people getting up for it or not? Because they're 6-0 losing in America. They've literally never won in America. They've only won once ever. It's 9-1-1, so one draw. We all loved 98, I think. I think we're all on board for 2019 as well, back at Royal Melbourne, so we're in with a chance. But essentially, if it was a closer competition, do you think people would be up for it more?
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think it desperately... We don't need to win this one, but we need to be right knocking on the door. I'm really... I've had the good fortune to talk to Adam Scott about this over the years, and he credits the President's Cup with almost saving his career. So in 2009 at Harding Park, Greg Norman threw him the lifeline, the captain's pick, when he was in terrible form by his own admission, and he started to find it and turned it around and ended up winning at the Australian Open later that year. I think he's the driving force. He's the one who's got it together now with Nick Price. And we heard last week a little snippet from Nick Price in his interview with RSN that team camaraderie has just started to kick in. And if you've heard any of the interviews from New Jersey this week, you can really sense that team spirit. And I think that's imperative, because if they play with that, because that's what the Americans bring by default.
That's what they do.
That's what they do better than any other country in the world. We've got to match that, and then I think the fans will come.
What's it for? What is the aim of the President's Cup? If you had to, in 50 words or less, kind of sum up its mission statement, we know what the Ryder Cup's about. Two powerhouses of world. When the Ryder Cup was established, it was the up and coming force against the powerhouse of world golf to see who could produce the best stable of players. What is the point of the President's Cup? What's it trying to do?
I think it's a ragtag bunch of underdogs who have been overlooked for a century, banding together to take on the might of the biggest country in the world. Golf for so long is Britain and the United States, and who else cares? It took a long time for Europe to get on board, which is extraordinary in the Ryder Cup sense now that we look back at it. But this is our chance, and this is my naive, boyish look at it, to stick it up the US. That's how I see it.
Strong play.
That's probably harder for you to hear, given the fact that you've spent a lot of years over in America and probably have a great affection for the US of A.
I do, but I think I think the way that we look at the US from an Aussie perspective is quite a unique one. But I do think that the President's Cup was created in a way that was quite instrumental in getting golf into some of the crevices of the world and giving those people a platform to play on, particularly throughout parts of Asia. I think on the men's side that was really important, and I think the extension of golf there, it was a spark of sorts that has helped that grow, particularly over in the eastern parts of the world. So, you look at it's also a big launch point for a lot of those Asian players that aren't on Western radars at all yet, and I think that's their time to come and shine. You see, Siwoo Kim and stuff like that, and people are going to work out how good that kid is this week, which is awesome. But everyone over there's they've known that for years. So I think seeing him in form and then going out and playing is going to be fun.
That's why Ali's a professional broadcaster. Reasoned responses, as opposed to my rubbish and vitriol. It's absolute chalk and cheese. No. But I fully concur with what Ali said, and I actually think golf has a an issue perception-wise in a lot of other instances. But I actually think golf leads the way in interacting with Asia. Especially in the women's game. The Korean, Chinese, Taiwanese, Thai influence on world golf is unmistakable and just awesome. And I think golf's actually done a great job of aligning with Asia, better than other sports have. I think we lead, maybe even soccer. We even lead soccer in that front. And
you truly believe that? About the last statement?
That we lead soccer?
Yeah.
In integration?
Yeah.
Not as in... Yeah, I do. Yeah, I actually think that Asia is a second-rate area in soccer in so many people's eyes. And I don't think that's true in golf.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And I think... I've got inverted commas going here, which you can't see, but the Western society, golfers are actually fully embracing Maria Jatanagarn, Ari Jatanagarn, all the Korean players.
Yeah,
we love Jumbo Ozaki back in the day. We love Shigeki Maruyama, all these Sayo Aoki, all these guys and girls from all around Asia, north and south. They're sort of revered players, and I don't think you could find that in many other sports at all. Maybe baseball. I'm trying to think of any others that pop into my mind, and I really can't think of any. Well, there's been one great example, and other than that, I don't think if you blocked out Yao Ming, that who's the next person?
No, in terms of climbing to the top of the tree, you're probably right.
Yeah. Oh, there's been plenty of Asian players, like great Asian soccer players, but I don't think any have been embraced the way golfing athletes have by the general world at large. And I can't wait to see Sang Moon Bae come back in a couple of years when he's finished this nonsense military thing that he's had to do. I can't wait for Siwoo Kim to be seen on the world stage. All these guys, there's a heap of young Thai kids who are awesome.
Yeah,
I'm excited about that. Maybe I'm naive, Andy.
I don't think you are. No. I don't think you are at all. Anything you want to say on the back of that?
I think that's incredibly accurate.
So I don't know where the whole in terms before we get stuck into the pairings that have been put together for the foursomes for day one. I don't know where this was going to fit, and I still don't know whether it does fit in terms of this is not necessarily an integration, but it's certainly an inclusion debate and an equality debate that's taking place in American sport at the moment. You have to have your head under a rock to not know what's happening in pro sports like football and basketball in particular over in America with the taking the knee, Black Lives Matter, equality for all debate that's going on over there. Well, golf did confront the questions this week going into the President's Cup when, particularly the American team headed up by Davis Love and Steve Stricker, who were the two mouthpieces, given the fact that Davis Love, is part of the team and was inducted into the Hall of Fame this week, and Steve Stricker, the captain, were asked their questions about how will the American team deal with the taking the knee debate that seems to be dividing a large part of America at the moment. I'll just play to you what Love and Stricker had to say, and then we'll have a bit of a chat about it afterwards.
You'll see in golf that there's a little bit more restraint, a little bit more of, we adhere to our rule book and to our core values and to our traditions, and I think that's why our sport's so successful. And also look to NASCAR. They start their race with a prayer where they bow their heads and they respect the national anthem at the same time. And there's a time for us to protest, and it really isn't during the national anthem. We ought to take a break during the prayer or during the national anthem to thank our country, to thank our forefathers who went before us, and then we can protest with our votes, with our letters to our congressmen, or however we want. But I think President Trump is right. There's a time for protest, and it probably isn't during the national anthem.
We've had that discussion already, and that none of my players want to do that. We're going to do what we always do, and that's take off our hat and put our hands across our chest and over our heart and respect the flag. So that's what we're planning on doing.
So that was Davis Love and Steve Stricker. Sensible, thoughtful, considered responses to the questions and the issues. Anyone want to say anything off the back of that?
I think I'm actually, and I'm not a politically empowered person or motivated person really, but I like the fact that they're not going to protest during that point in time, because we are constantly begging for more tournaments where people get to represent their country or countries with the internationals. So to go and kind of turn a shoulder to that during during what they've been wanting, and trying to get a place on that team for the past 2 years, I feel like it'd be a little bit out of place in terms of just trying to get everyone on board with it. I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit counterintuitive in a way and counterproductive.
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is counterintuitive. And I don't know about you, Hazy, but I would never have expected the American team to take a political position on this. I'll take a real stance on this. No one, I don't think anybody truly expected them to, which if they decided to, would have been unbelievably powerful. Because think about where they come from compared to where a lot of the black NFL and NBA players come from. If that strata, i.e. the country club, white golf community, if that said to the world when the world was watching, no, we are together with our other athletes around who are supporting the people on this, that there needs to be something done, well, then it would have been, I put to you, would have been the most powerful symbol. The President's Cup, rich, millionaire, white athletes standing up saying, no, we're with our NBA and NFL brothers. It would have, now, I completely agree with you. It would have felt jarring and it would have looked really awkward. It would have been unbelievably awkward. But it would have made a really, really powerful statement.
Yeah. Again, Ali makes another great point. I fundamentally sort of disagree because I just think when else are you going to get that platform to make that statement, which is what you're saying, Andy.
It's when everyone's watching.
Yeah, there's no point in having a little protest back at the Medalist Club next weekend when there's not a camera there. Mm. So what does that achieve? Look, they may not even feel like there is a problem, half these guys.
And that's true too, yeah.
There's right side of the tracks and wrong side of the tracks. They're so far on the right side of the tracks that they can't even see the tracks. Mm. So is there a problem in their world? Maybe not, even despite everything that's going on with this crazy world that we're actually living in. And, it goes on so many different levels right now.
Well, I think this President's Cup in particular, and I don't know if this is the romantic side of me, having it been at Liberty National, with I think it's about 800 feet away from the Statue of Liberty as well, close, one of the holes. Yeah. It's so close. Yeah. And so just kind of the principle of that as well. I don't know, it feels like this is a truly American President's Cup in purely because of where it is, I think, as well. It's in the heart. Essentially, it's 2 kilometres away from the biggest city in the country, one of the biggest cities in the world, and probably debatedly one of the most divided cities as well in terms of demographics and voting and, Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative mind frames. So I don't know. It would have been a massive statement, yes. But I don't know. I'm torn on it.
So look, in terms of the inclusion element of the whole conversation that's taking place here, in terms of just what golf can do. You say, it's leading the way into, parts of the East. In terms of, if there'll be a lot of people who will listen to Davis Love and Steve Strick, and they go, of course, it's golf. That's golf. It's the most conservative sport on the planet. That's golf. It's a rich man's sport. It's a conservative sport. If golf wants to break that assumption, that image, does it need to maybe review itself on positions like this? I don't know. That's a real big picture. It's a really big picture topic right there. But we all know that is the perception of golf amongst our friends who don't play golf. We're snobs.
It's the problem of golf. It is the quintessential problem of golf, is that a 9-year-old girl walking past her local golf club thinks, I don't want to go in there. I have to change clothes.
Exactly.
I've got to change my attitude.
I'm not welcome.
There's no clear-cut pathway for me to become even a 20 handicapper, let alone a professional, Ali. This is the problem. And that multiplies, sadly, if you're a girl, if you're not white, if you have some different religious belief, it multiplies exponentially every time that girl walks past. It's like, oh, another big stumbling point. It's an awkward spot golf's in, but if we don't break it down, we don't take that next step to the game that it really could be.
I agree.
I'm on board. Yeah, I mean, I hate to use clothing as an example, but we need more fluoro on high tops in golf. And obviously, given the last couple of months and that conversation, is kind of a taboo one now. But I mean, it's what we need. We need more music in on ranges, stuff like that. We need to start thinking outside the box. And there are people within the golf world that are working towards this. I mean, the amount of conversations I've had with tournament promoters, with the TV crews that I work with, saying, "Come on, let's do this. Can we do this? Can we do this? Like, are we actually allowed to do that?" And it's one of the things I'm actually really proud of over the next couple of weeks. We're going to be pushing some serious boundaries on the LPGA Asian swing, which is going to be awesome. So, break the mould.
Great.
I think this all started when we said the word side boob on this very podcast.
That's
Andy.
exactly right.
G'day, I'm My Golf Ambassador Jason Day. I'm really excited to be an ambassador for My Golf, Australian Golf's national junior program, jointly run by Golf Australia and the PGA. My Golf is every Aussie kid's first step on their golfing pathway. It's all about teaching children the basic skills of golf in a safe and healthy environment, and just as importantly, about the life skills that golf can teach you that distinguish our sport from the rest. Remember to visit mygolf.org.au for more information.
Hey, I'm Catherine Kirk, and I want to encourage all the young gals and ladies of all ages to get out there for Golf Month, or the month of October, and go have some fun out in the golf course.
The actual President's Cup, the day one foursomes have been announced. Has anyone got them in front of you? Do you want to go? Have you got them in front of you, El? Why don't you go through them?
So day one, there's always 5 matches. We should probably go through. So there's 5 matches of foursomes on day one, 5 matches of 4-ball on day 2, and then 4 of each on day 3 and singles on the Sunday, where everybody plays, which is always... which is always, I mean, anything can happen, can't it?
It's a good one.
Essentially, so let's talk through the foursomes first of all. So Ricky Fowler's out first with Justin Thomas, playing against Hideki Matsuyama and Charles Schwartzel. Second up, Dustin Johnson and Matt Kuchar versus Adam Scott and Jonathan Vegas. Jordan Spieth and Patrick Reed, who actually haven't won a foursomes match in the President's Cup together. They're out against Siwoo Kim and Emiliano Grillo, and then also Brooks Koepka, Daniel Berger. I always get that one. Yeah. I want to say Berger, just out of
paint.
But it's, I know. Yep. Louis Oosthuizen and Brendan Grace. So they're playing against each other. And final is Kisner, Mickelson and Jason Day and Mark Leishman. Go Aussies!
It's a very strong... You look down the right-hand side of the draw there. It's a very, very strong... Not that the President's Cup isn't strong. If you go on world rankings, then we've really got no hope. I mean, we'll get blown. We'll get completely blown out of the water if you want to predict what it's going to do based on world rankings. But, gee, it does look an unbelievably strong and, by and large, as it should be, a really in-form American team, doesn't it? Like, they look particularly ominous.
Don't buy into this, Andy. This is our time. I'm going to be the one person in the.
You're a believer?
Oh, I'm absolutely a believer. We're going to get our butts absolutely kicked from pillar to post if we go on world rankings. They're fully aware of that. They're going to go out here and they're going to. I'm pumped for this. I really am pumped. And if you look down that, it sounds good to say Ricky Fowler and Justin Thomas, but we've got Hideki Matsuyama, who's clearly their superior when he's playing well.
Yep.
His best is better than their best.
Schwartzel
can do anything.
Yep.
And this whole conversation will just roll down the page. Every match that was just listed there, we've got the capacity to do it. If one team gets on a roll or comes back from 3 down to pinch it on the 18th, look out. And if we can somehow finish square by their Saturday afternoon and go into the singles, mate, it's game on. I'm pumped for this.
We have I'd say we, internationals, obviously, but we've got a much better singles record.
Yeah.
By a long way.
No doubt. Yeah,
by a long way. Yeah. The American team, the ones that are teeing up again, have only ever won 4 singles matches. So this out of 6 guys who have all played, I think, collectively over 10 President's Cups together minimum. I think, Phil on his own. But, lost 12 matches, drew 4.
That's amazing.
Versus 11 wins on the international side. So if you can actually get within QE after, like, Saturday afternoon, like Hazy said, actually really, cash out on your bets. It's one of those things where, anything really is possible.
further to this, Andy, and we've got so many golf results to talk about. The Junior President's Cup was held this week. The inaugural one at Plainfield Country Club, just up the road from Liberty National, also in New Jersey. 3 Australian kids there: Fred Lee from Perth, Josh Armstrong from Canberra, and Carl Phillips from Melbourne. They tried their guts out and they lost. They were 9-3 down after the first day of foursomes and 4-ball and smashed the US in the singles, but couldn't get it done. And I know for a fact that they've gone in and talked. The international team sort of said, "This is what we can't afford to do. This is exactly what we've done historically. It's what we can't afford to do." And the guys were all talking about it. The open age team. So, it flashed through their mind exactly what Ali was just saying, and they know that, but it was just reinforced, and it was sort of, to use an American term under the Statue of Liberty, it's neat that they had this chance to be learned from the kids.
Yeah,
so,
no, I agree.
That was a great experience. There was a great photo today of the 3 Aussie kids with the 3 Aussie senior guys, open age guys in the International President's Cup team. It was awesome. These opportunities to change kids' lives, just fantastic. And the next wave, like the 15, 16, Louis Doblar age category now, looking at that and going, if I play well for the next 2 years, I can go and cuddle up with Jason Day at Royal Melbourne. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to look forward to. So that's all starting. The thing that concluded on last weekend, of course, was the FedEx Cup. It's done and dusted. You weren't here. We were talking about this last week. I couldn't give a stuff about this. The FedEx Cup, I don't know how long it's been around, 10 plus years. I don't even know how many years officially it's been going for now. It doesn't work for me. I think you talk about counterintuitive. This is completely counterintuitive.
And he's a UPS guy.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So Xander, go on, Schauffele.
I love it when that happens.
He weasels his way into his own words. He weasels his way into the 30 and weasels his way through the tournament. And good luck. It makes a nervy putt on 18 from about 2.5 foot, but it goes in and he wins. And good luck to him. It's fantastic for a young kid who's probably looking at putting $100 million in his bank account over the next 5 or 10 years anyway. But it's great for him to, sort of prove to himself, having won earlier in the year on the PGA Tour, that he can back it up, against the elite 30. But really, Justin Thomas wins the $10 million. Do we walk away learning anything about anyone? Does it make any difference to the game? Is it? What does this thing mean?
I think, when I was looking back at Justin Thomas's year, I think it's incredibly special in the climate that golf is in at the moment, where anyone really can win, for him to have a year that was essentially all about him. Sure, he missed a ton of cuts, but I genuinely think that that's something iconic and special, that he dominated 2017. And so for him to get the prize at the end, obviously, is great, but I think the whole year was potentially the more important thing. It is
let me ask
terribly hard to do that these days.
You probably haven't got his whole year results in front of you. But where would this sit? Where would winning, and this puts the whole thing into some sort of perspective, I reckon, if you'd have said to someone 50 years ago, you're going to win an event and it's going to be worth $10 million, well, they would have taken that, I put to you, over any of the 4 major championships. Maybe. Now, I'm not quite sure, because they're making that much money anyway. So where does him winning the $10 million sit in his career, in terms of the season results that he's had? Would it have been the best? Would it have been his top 3 achievements for the year? Wouldn't be, would it?
No. I put it to you, Ali, that even if he hadn't even bothered to turn up at East Lakes, and therefore obviously clearly couldn't win that money, that he's still the PGA Tour Player of the Year. Yeah. And there's not a blight on it if he doesn't even turn up. So you can take the $10 million off it. That's that magical season. I've got to stop doing inverted commas in a studio.
You should
it just
do
doesn't
a mic
work.
Tap or something, just so people can understand what you're doing. Because you look like a fairy when you do it. It's kind of nice, but they're really missing out.
Craig can do a little sound effect every time you do it.
Okay. Little
get some twinkles on here, Craig.
Triangle
Come on.
or something. Yeah, but I that I've now forgotten what I was saying. But that
Player of the Year, don't turn up. Yeah,
the magical moment for him happened at the PGA Championship, and he's already done enough, in my eyes, to be the Player of the Year before he won the FedEx Cup. So I'm sort of saying who cares, and I'm sticking with the Web.com Tour Finals being a far more evocative sort of notion to get you, to stir your blood.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more.
I mean, I'm going to answer this question with another question and be cryptic. But was the FedEx Cup, was that on his list of goals at the start of the year?
Yeah,
it would have been. It would have been.
It wasn't. It wasn't on. It said so. His. Did you guys see when he showed his list of 16, 17 goals? So it was on. Yeah, so it was on social media, and it's something kind of good to talk about because he had outcome goals, but then he also went down into how he's going to achieve them, which is something I recommend every single player that plays golf to do. Work out where you want to get to, and then strip it back and start looking at what do I need to do to actually
reverse
win
engineer
this.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what professionals probably do better than anyone else in the game because they understand their games better than anyone. So Tour Championship, yes. Win at least once, yes. Be in final 2 groups of a major on Sunday. Win a major. Make President's Cup. And then he goes into performance goals about top 10 and half my stats, top 30 in scrambling, under par on pars 3s, 4s, 5s, top 10 in all-round stats, plus 0.25 in or better in strokes gained putting. So he breaks it down, but FedEx Cup wasn't on there.
No,
so
right.
That's surprising because I think winning the FedEx Cup shows a great season, I'm surprised that's not on there. That's more good research from you, Ellie. Curse you, Ellie Whitaker. Curse you.
You've had way too much time on planes or something to sit down with nothing better to do than clearly research.
It's sad.
And
it is
really
actually
sad. You're putting us to shame.
But it is surprising that that's not on there, even though we belittle it, Andy, a little bit ourselves, because it does signify a great season. I just think the $10 million aspect is lost.
I don't mind the idea of having playoffs, but it just seems to counterintuitive for the third time has been. It just seems that we get to the end of it all and it's. We've had this conversation in the past, and you mentioned the Web.com finals, and we're into the final event this week. Not one Australian is guaranteed a PGA Tour card at this stage. I know did you or Blakey who wrote the piece on golf.org.au about where we sit?
Yeah, so it's Cam Percy. He's the only bloke who's got his little fingers on a card at the moment, but it's by no means certain. They basically fall into 3 different categories. There's Perce, who needs probably a top 20, will get the job done. He's sitting 14th, I think, at the moment. Then there's 3 guys, Curtis Luck, Brett Druitt, and Scott Hend, all sitting between high 30s and 45.
Matty Jones as well.
Is he in that
47?
Is he in that same category? Yep. Okay. Well, they probably need a top 10 to have a realistic shot at it, and then there's the rest of the guys. Or maybe I missed Matt Jones there. Appleby,
Arnold, Gibson, Appleby.
Thank you. All need a top 5 straight out. That needs to be a solo top 5 too. Couldn't two-way share of that won't get the job done. So it's pretty clear cut what they've got to do. But Cam Percy is really the only one you'd put any hard earned on.
And we're all barracking hard for him. I hope he gets in, and if he's listening, we're right in your corner. This is, for me, Al, and you haven't been part of this conversation, I'm keen to get your views on this. Compare what these guys are playing for compared to what the blokes at Eastlake were playing for. It's not life or death, because these guys are making good money anyway, but this is what it's really about. This is real pressure. This is where you're going to see, as Clayton said, this is where you're going to see blokes choke. Because it really matters. The blokes are walking away from Eastlake. They've got their boots completely filled. They're under no pressure. There's no pressure on those 30 blokes teeing it up there, whereas for the players with an Australian flag alongside that Hazy's just mentioned, they've got it all to play for.
It's interesting, isn't it, when everything's on the line, what actually genuinely happens. And we talk about pressure golf, and I think that's why the majors are so important, particularly on the PGA Tour, because that's when you see people really starting to freak out.
Yes, exactly.
Like the best players in the world freak out at majors.
Yes.
And they tank it on back nines, and they do everything, and they become so human all of a sudden. When the reality is there's such a big portion of professional golfers that are human all year long and making cuts. It is so hard to get your mind around trying to play. And, and when you talk to Travis Smythe about this a couple of episodes back, talking about just going out and playing and not thinking about playing for the cut, it is so hard to do that when money's on the line and when you don't have enough sponsors or something like that. And it's such an incredibly difficult mind frame to nurture in golf. And I understand completely what the web.com guys feel like. Mind you, they're still making a better earning than, at least 70% of Australians, realistically, that are doing it back here. But, it really does bring out your true colours. And I know Clates takes quite a strong stance on the concept of, how are you playing? I don't know, I haven't played a tournament in a while. And that, there is no better showing than right now for the web.com guys.
What does it say about, just going back to what you said about Justin Thomas before, and we kind of addressed this a few weeks ago about the number of cuts that he misses. For him just to go out and play and not let his confidence get knocked around by a miscut. Whereas I imagine if, for some players, you look at what Danny Willett's been through, and, he's a bundle and he looks like he went okay last week. He sort of shot some reasonable numbers last week over in Portugal, but his last 6 months has been horrific. And the pressure that is mounting must be mounting on him. What's happened to my game? Where's it gone? Can I still play? For Justin Thomas not to worry about missing a cut and just coming next... I miss a cut, it doesn't matter. I'll win next week. I won't just make the cut next week. I'll win next week. That mindset that he's got, that's a phenomenon. Maybe that happens when you're 25. Maybe it doesn't happen when you're 45. It
just makes goal setting really difficult because your goals and the goalposts are constantly changing when you're playing well or when they're not. And so for Danny in particular, it's so hard for him in the rut that he's in to think about winning and not think about starting to change the goals that he'd had when he was playing incredibly well. And that's a little internal battle that he's going to be having, and it's something that I don't think that Justin Thomas does have this year because he's had an excellent year. So they're just in completely different boats, but it's so mental. Golf.
It's hard watching. Have you spent any time watching Danny Willett in the last couple of months?
Yeah.
Gee, it's hard to watch him at the moment. He's twitchy. It's like he's twitching when he gets into the address position. It's almost like he twitches every part of his body, and it's almost like he's waiting for feel. I'm just watching him going. He's waiting for the whole thing to just click. Okay, I've twitched my shoulder. Now my right buttock, my left knee's just wobbled into the right spot. Okay, now I can hit it. But he just can't. He can't hit the ball properly at the moment.
Well, he probably looks like Sergio Garcia a couple of years back, or Keegan Bradley on a good day. Realistically,
that's probably right. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the mental checklist works for almost no one.
It's hard watching him.
Tournament pressure.
Do you think, Ali, that he's actually standing there very subliminally going, people think I'm a dud Masters champion? I need to prove to them that I'm not. Because he was such a good player before he won that.
Oh, yeah.
He was really legitimately a good player. But he's done so little since, and people are starting to wonder, because if they hadn't watched the European Tour, they'd go,
what's he been doing?
Yeah, what did you even do to deserve being in the Masters?
I think golf is incredibly cyclic for the majority of players. If you can manage to not have a cyclic career where you go in and out of purple patches, then you're going to have a pretty healthy bank account for most accounts. But it is one of those things where it's rare when you say he was great until he won a major. Those words are rare, realistically. You usually hear he was a great player, but he never won a major, or the other side of the coin. So it's going to be interesting watching Danny. He's essentially a good player, though, and I do genuinely think he'll get back on the horse.
Okay, there's a lot of other bits and pieces we need to talk about on the way through, which we will in a moment. We'll get a quick break out of the way, come back with David Graham on our road to the Open. Now, we just need to preface that when we come back, you won't be hearing the truly professional and dulcet tones of Alison Whitaker as part of that interview. We had to record it a couple of weeks ago when Mike Clayton was in the house. So Clates Hazy and I spent some time with one of the giants of Australian golf. We'll hear from David Graham on the other side of this.
The Golf Australia website is now the place to go to look up your handicap and so much more. Whether you're out and about on your phone or in the office trying to avoid work, just go to golf.org.au and punch your golf link number into the box at the top of the homepage. Who knows, maybe that last round was just good enough to put you in single figures. While you're on the site, check out the daily golf results at your club, view our course index for up-to-date ratings, read the latest golf news from home and abroad, listen to Australian golf podcasts and interviews, and watch video tournament highlights or tips to improve your game. It's everything a golf tragic could want. Visit golf.org.au today, the home of Australian golf.
G'day, my name's Bob Shearer, the 1982 Australian Open champ. When you're listening on the radio, listen to the ropes for all the news and scoops coming up.
Time now to continue our road to the Open Series. We go back to 1977. I know you want to talk about a couple, maybe at least one Australian Open a few years before 77, Clays, but don't let us get too sidetracked because we're going to celebrate the victory of David Graham back at the Australian back in 77, and one of the greatest players ever to come out of this nation has been good enough to join us on Inside the Ropes. Hi, David. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Nice to be with you.
It's great to have you with us. It really is. And we're looking forward to spending some time having a chat to you about this and a few other things, obviously. Okay. 77's a long time ago, Dave. When we ask you to kind of reflect to that year and what the Open, how the Australian Open played out for you and what it meant to you, how vivid are those memories?
Well, they're actually still very vivid because I was fortunate to come back for their 100th year celebration, and I've been a member at the Australian Golf Club for many, many years, and it was really nice to receive their wonderful hospitality and everything. And it was also, great because I think it was either the first or the second year after Jack Nicklaus had redone the Australian that I'd won, and it was obviously financed in those days by the late, great Kerry Packer. So he resurrected the Australian Open, and the year that I particularly won had a wonderful field, and it was really a launching pad for the Open Championship to get back into world acclaim.
How important was Kerry Packer at that time, David? I mean, we sort of gloss over him in golfing terms, but everyone sort of links his name with cricket. But he did so much for Australian golf at that time, didn't he? What was your personal relationship with him?
Well, I didn't know him all that well. I spent quite a bit of time with him when he was getting tutored by the great Norman von Nider, and obviously he had brought Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer and Gary Player and a very large world-class field to play in the Open and kind of resurrected it a little bit. And he put a lot of money into the tournament, and he put a lot of money into the Australian Golf Club, and he converted the Australian from an old kind of linksy style design, which was, shallow bunkers and very benign greens and everything. He brought Jack Nicklaus in and made the Australian Golf Club, one of the great courses in the world. And so his contribution to golf was really incredible.
Did you see him around the Open when you were playing, through that period, David?
Oh, absolutely. He was out there all the time. The week before the Open, he would take Jack Nicklaus up to the Great Barrier Reef, and they would go marlin fishing, and then a lot of players would stay at his house. And a lot of the golfers in those days were fond of playing tennis, so they would play tennis, and he was a great host. He was wonderful. He brought the world's best to play in the Australian Open. We were very fortunate.
We spoke to Bob Shearer about him a couple of weeks ago on the show as part of this series, and Bob remembered going to Kerry's home and pictures of wild animals devouring other less capable animals in the wild. Did you ever big paintings and photos all over? He said, did you ever go to Kerry's house, and can you validate?
Sure I did. I lots of times, yes.
Can you remember paintings and pictures like that strewn all over the place?
Kerry had anything that he wanted. Kerry had. And right. He had a massive big house, and he had whatever he wanted, and television sets everywhere. And yeah, he was great. Food always on the buffet table and everything. Yeah, he was remarkable, and he had that one little room where he would go and sit in his great big leather chair and watch television. And he was a character. But his country, the one thing that I remember very vividly was that I think maybe Jack or Arnold had complained about the practice balls, range balls on the practice fairway at the Open there at the Australian, and so about the next day. He brought in, I don't know how many thousands or dozens of Dunlop 65 golf balls and opened up buckets full of brand new balls. And by about Friday night or Saturday morning, there was none of them left. All the caddies and all the players had stuffed their bags with all these
magnificent.
Yeah, it was. I'm sure that a lot of people remember that. Yeah.
So, David, on just the field, you referred to the field. I mean, this is the one you conquered, and we'll talk to you more about how you did it in a second. But aside from all the great Australian names, we're looking at Palmer, Nicholas.
Yeah.
Charles,
Litsky,
January. We've got Ray Floyd.
Yes.
I can see on the list down here of B. Jones, but I don't think that was Bobby at that time.
Brian Jones.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
But and a really good,
he missed the cut,
and a really fantastic player called Mark Hayes too. I just want to get that on the record.
No, Hubert Green was there, and it was amazing.
It's an extraordinary field, isn't it?
It was, and he paid for it. He made it all possible, and Qantas were, I think, the sponsors, and they gave us airline tickets, and Mr. Packer helped us with our hotel bills, and he wanted the Australian Open to be the best it could be. And in his time, he did exactly that. And if you think, and I've often said this in some of my speeches around the country, that if you think about Nicholas, Palmer, and Player as the big three in golf, and you think that Jack Nicklaus won 6 Australian Opens, and Gary Player won 7 Australian Opens, and Mr. Palmer won 1. And you think about doing that in the late 60s and the early 70s, that was a heck of an effort to fly from South Africa or Florida, where Jack lived, to come to Australia and let young aspiring players like myself have a chance to see what world-class golfers were. And it was very important to the future of Australian golf that their contribution allowed young guys to look and learn, and that's what it was. It was quite remarkable for that period of time.
David, something close to your heart related to those players was the fact that I always thought was amazing, and I'm sure you did too, was that they would come down here and pick up a set of clubs from Slasingers and a small ball and still win.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I remember playing a practice round with Jack Nicklaus at Royal Hobart the year he won there quite convincingly, and I forget which hole it was. It was maybe number 12 or 13. It was a dog leg to the right, and the caddy said, "Oh, Mr. Nicklaus, just hit a 2-iron down there, and you'll have a wedge to the green." And Jack said, "Well, where is the green?" And the caddy said, "Oh, it's up over the trees to the right." And Jack said, "Well, how far is it?" Oh, he said, "Well, Mr. Nicklaus, it's 320-something yards." And Jack said, "Well, let me hit it up over the trees." And, of course, I hit it down the fairway and had a wedge, and we walked around the corner, and, there was a ball on the green about 20 feet from the hole, and obviously it was Nicklaus's ball. And, yeah, it was quite remarkable that they would change clubs, not the putter, and usually not the driver or the 3-wood, but they certainly would change irons. I mean, I think Gary changed irons every year he came, so did Jack. Yeah, it was quite remarkable.
Why did that happen,
Dave? The ability to do that.
Why did that happen?
Well, they had contracts, Jack had a contract with McGregor in America, and then he had a Dunlop-Slazenger contract in England and a Dunlop contract in Australia, as did, like, Gary Player and that. So they would come down there and represent that club manufacturing company and play their equipment. So it was quite a profitable thing for them to do, but it was amazing that they could change clubs like that.
We might have to tell McIlroy to suck it up, Andy.
Imagine a modern-day player. David Clates, can you imagine a modern-day player doing that?
It would never happen now.
Well, I don't think they have the ability to adjust that quickly because they have so many variables with the metal heads and the changeable shafts and everything. The older players had, I think, more repeatable swings. They didn't rely on the equipment because it wasn't very sophisticated compared to today. So they made adjustments where the younger players don't have to make adjustments. The younger players can get the clubs to adjust to them rather than the player adjusting to the clubs. So the whole scenario of availability for equipment is completely different.
Now, David, speaking of adjusting to clubs, we were talking with Andy just before the show. Tell us about George Naismith. George was the pro who adjusting to clubs, you turned pro as a left-hander.
I learned so many things from that man. I learned how to polish shoes. I learned how to polish the floor. I learned how to buff clubs. I learned how to build clubs. But the true story is I was leaving the driveway at Riversdale Golf Club one year, and I think I'd only been there for a year, and I was hitting a few balls nearly in the dark on the practice fairway, which ran parallel to the road. And I was playing left-handed, and he stopped the car, and he came out, and he said, "Watch me." He said, "Let me watch you hit a couple of balls." So I hit like 3 or 4 balls left-handed down the fairway about 200 yards and everything. And he said, "I didn't know you played left-handed." He said, "I don't think you're going to be a very good player playing left-handed." He said, "I don't ever want to see you swing left-handed again." He said, "Starting tomorrow, you get yourself a set of right-handed clubs, and I want you to start playing right-handed." And I looked at him, and I just simply said, "Yes, sir."
So
then fast forward about 6 months, and I'm out on the lower part of the putting green at Riversdale hitting a few putts, and I really hadn't adjusted to putting right-handed, so I was practicing left-handed. And he said, walked out from the pro shop, walked across the green. He said, "What do you think you're doing?" I said, "Well, I'm practicing my putting." He said, "You don't want people to think you look stupid if you play right-handed and putt left-handed." He said, "People are going to laugh at you." So he said, "I want you to start putting right-handed." I looked at him, "Yes, sir."
So
true story.
Wow.
So, David,
yeah.
Do you think he was right about that left-handed assessment of your game? Do you think you could have made it as a left-hander?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I was. I wasn't that strong a guy. I was, I wasn't very heavy. I wasn't big and strong. His belief, and I still believe it today, his belief was that the stronger of the two hands should be on the bottom of the grip. So when the club comes down on the downswing, it's open to the target, and it requires the stronger of the two hands to get the club head back to square at impact. And that was his philosophy, and I think even today, with a few exceptions, and there are always some exceptions, but I think today the strong hand should still be on the bottom of the club.
So what made him think you were right-handed, though? Like, you've obviously been good enough to turn pro as a left-hander.
No, he simply asked me. He said, "Do you throw left-handed?" I said, "No, I throw right-handed." He said, "Do you write right-handed?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, then your dominant side is right-handed, and I think it should be on the bottom part of your grip." And I was young, and I was tutored well and given good advice, and it wasn't my position to dispute it. So I just said simply, "Yes, sir, I believe what you're telling me." And I think it was very strong advice for a 15-year-old kid.
So someone else who gave you great advice was one of the most loved Australian golfers ever, Bruce Devlin.
Yeah.
So,
well, Bruce Devlin really had a huge impact on my game because I had learned to play mainly under Alex Mercer's tutelage, but I had learned to play with the small ball. I stood a long way from the ball with my address position. I played with flat clubs, and I was what they would call today a slinger of the ball. I hit slinging right to lefts all the time to get power. And I played at Colonial in like 1972, and I missed the cut, and I went to Bruce, and I said, "Bruce, I'm really struggling. I can't stop the ball." He said, "Do you want me to give you the whole story?" And I said, "Yeah, of course I do. I want to be a better player." He said, "Well, you've got to learn to hit the ball higher, and the only way you can do that is to get closer to the ball and get your swing more upright." And I was also fortunate that I lived very close to Jack Nicklaus, and I would go up there and periodically practice with him at his club, and then I would play a lot of practice rounds with him at Augusta. And the more I watched him, the more I got getting closer to the ball and getting a higher ball flight. But Bruce was the person that started that whole ball rolling, because you can't play golf with tucked pins and firm greens if you can't control the trajectory of the ball. So being a low slinging hook player to going to hitting high straight balls was a huge difference relevant to the swing plane.
So how long did that take you?
Oh, yeah.
Before you felt like you were one of the best players on the tour by the mid to late 70s, probably.
I won my first tournament in 1972 in America, so I obviously adjusted pretty good because I had people that had been there and had done it and were successful, and it wasn't for me to really dispute that. I thought, well, they know a lot more than I do, and they're not there to hurt me. They're here to help. So it was just to my benefit to pay attention and listen and try and apply it.
So you failed to mention who you beat in a playoff for that tournament.
I beat Bruce, yeah.
Yeah. You must have had your work ethic to make this happen, David, to go from left to right and then to change, kind of like your whole swing again once you've had that conversation with Bruce Devlin. Was that one of your great strengths, just your ability to get on the range and make the thing work?
Well, I don't think for any player, I don't think the game comes easily. Players make it look easy, but it's because they work the hardest. And I don't think anybody is just out of the womb destined to be a good player. I think it's a work in progress like tennis is. You go one step at a time, and golf's the same, and you learn at one level and then you go to the next level. And I always believed that the harder, I believed in the Gary Player philosophy, that the harder you worked, the more successful you would be. And I didn't have a good relationship with my dad because he drank so much. So I just didn't have any desire to go to bars and party and drink. I would much prefer to go to the practice fairway. So it was a good thing for me. I think that's what was my driving force, is that I wanted to make something out of my life, and golf was it.
Well, there's something really profoundly important in there for any young player who might be listening to this. Can I just go right back to where we started, back to 77 at the Australian Golf Club, David? We've got this series where we're celebrating Australian Open wins. What were the conditions? Can you remember what the conditions were like in the third round that year? There were only 2 sub-70 rounds shot that day. One of them belonged to you, and I think Bob Shearer might have been the other. They were the only sub-70 rounds. And some of the great players in the field were shooting 80-pluses. Like Nicholas shot 80, Billy Dunk shot 80, Greg Norman shot 85. Can you remember what it was like that day?
What did I shoot?
68.
Oh, my gosh. I didn't realize I played that well. Well, I may have been blessed with a better tee time, too. I doubt that Nicholas would have been that far away from where I was playing, so the conditions might have been the same. So I may have just got very fortunate to have handled the conditions and be able to finish. I do remember the biggest memory I have is my tee shot at 17, because there was Jack had put a lake out there on the left side which was reachable. And I think I was playing with Don January. He hit it to the right in the trees, and he made 5 and I made 4, and then I hit my third shot on the green. But, yeah, I don't remember that much about it. I've never really spent much time thinking about all of the rounds that I've played. I remember certain shots, but I don't remember the rounds in their entirety. Very few people have the ability to do that, and I'm not one of them.
It was Jack Newton, by the way, shot the other sub-70 round that day.
Oh, was it?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of arguably not arguably one of the great rounds, one of the great rounds was at Meriden in 1981, where you said you don't remember even much of that round.
Well, I remember maybe more of that round than most, only because it was a U.S. Open and it was on a Sunday and it was a little bit deeper into my career. And it got so much publicity because of the greens in regulation and the methodicalness of that. I remember not all of it. I remember number 1. I remember 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. A few of the holes in between I don't remember, but that was a good day.
So how would you compare that round to the one at Oakland Hills, which aside from the last hole.
Yeah. You had to bring that up, didn't you?
Well, while it was par for 63, I mean that was going to be the lowest score ever in a major. It was even with the double bogey, it was still one of the great rounds ever played in major championship golf.
Well, and that was on a course that Hogan had labelled the Monster, because of its new design by Robert Trent Jones. And if that had been a 17-hole tournament, that would have been maybe the best. I think the best golf that I ever played was when I won the American Golf Classic at Firestone. I played the first 2 days with Mr. Palmer. I bogeyed the very first hole, and then I played 66 holes without making a bogey. Wow. And that was a hard golf course for guys playing old golf balls and wooden clubs and everything. That was really difficult. I think that, and I only won by 4, so I think that was some of the best 4-round golf that I'd ever played.
You win your 2 majors. Included in those, David, are 16 top 10 finishes in major championships, which is a really great record, and goes to why you're rightfully eventually inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame. How proud of your ability to produce really good golf, something close to your best golf, in major championships? How proud of that fact are you?
Well, I think a lot of that credit goes to guys like Gary Player and guys like Jack Nicklaus that wanted to win majors, and the preparation towards winning majors was different than playing in regular tournaments. And I think it's that way even today for the younger players. But I'm amazed at how, if you look at the Nicklaus era when he won 18 majors. But if you look at the players, excuse me, like Gary Player, I think won 9 majors against Nicklaus in his career. Tom Watson won 8. Lee Trevino won 6. Raymond Floyd won 5. So Nick Faldo won, I think, 6. There were a multitude of multiple major winners when Nicklaus was at his absolute peak in that 20-year period. And you don't see that today in golf. I mean, you look at McIlroy, he came out blistering and won 4 majors out of the blue, and then in the last 2 or 3 years hasn't come close. And I should interject and change a little bit, and I think Australian golf is blessed that they have like a Jordan Spieth that wants to come to Australia and considers that a very important tournament for him to win. And we're lucky that he's won, and we're lucky that he wants to come back and play again, because he's really keeping that tournament alive and sponsor happy because of his ability to come down there. So I take my hat off to him for doing that.
So, David, you obviously spent most of your professional career in the States and live there now. I saw it firsthand when you came back a couple of years ago for the 100th birthday celebrations, but you've been a super proud Australian for a very long time, played in Dunhill Cups and do your best to represent Australia whenever possible. What does that national championship mean to you among all the things you've won?
Oh, I think it's right up there. I mean, to win any national championship is a great thrill. And for me to have won at that particular time on that particular golf course with that quality of field, I could have, should have, maybe won more of them because I kept coming to Australia at the peak of my career. I don't know why I didn't play it or win more, but that particular one was very significant in my career. It obviously gave me a boost to stay in America and keep playing competitively. There's no question about that. But I kind of got my start when I won the Tasmanian Open and I won the Victorian Open, and Frank Phillips beat me in a playoff for me to win 3 in a row. That's kind of where I got started, and I was really lucky that Eric Kremen came to Tasmania when I lived down there, and I played a 9-hole exhibition with him. And he said, "You've got to get out of here." He said, "I'm going to get you a job in Sydney. I'm going to find you a place to live." And about 2 weeks later, he called me up and said, pack your bags, come up here. I've got you a job working for PGF for Claire Eggson. So there were periods in my life that were very significant to my success.
So another significant tournament, David, was Australian Open, was the 1972, the famous playoff with Peter Thompson, and what a great shot he hit to the last hole, and what a great tournament that was. I remember watching as a kid. I thought it was, it was in my eyes, to a 15, 14-year-old kid, it was a huge event then.
Yeah, it was, and I made an error. I mentally and did not do a very good job. I was upset at the fact that the official did not toss a coin on the first tee to see who had the honor, and Peter walked up and hit first, and I kind of stood there and said, wait a minute, why? Where's the ball toss, or where's the number out of the hat? I got ticked off, and I hit it out of bounds, and the rest was really history. So, but, I spent a little bit of time, talking about that. But a couple of years ago, when I was in Sydney, Mr. Thompson and Mary, my wife, and I went out, had a lovely dinner, and it was great. I'm sorry to hear that he's not in good health.
David, it's been a joy speaking to you. You are a living golfing treasure in this country over here, and I hope you get a sense for that when you speak to people who love the game, like the three of us here and others, that anytime we get to hear you reflect on what you've done, it's a great opportunity for us. And
well, I'm excited. I'm excited that the President's Cup is going to come back to Royal Melbourne in 2 years, and I'm on the board of that tournament, and I very kindly get invited. I'm on my way to New York this week for the President's Cup, and hopefully, if I'm still making a few putts, I'll come to Royal Melbourne in a couple of years. So that'll be another time for me to go down memory lane.
Well, you can catch up with the other Australian US Open champion this week at next week at the President's Cup. You'll both be there, which will be nice.
Yes.
He's the vice captain, so it'll be great if you could come down for Royal Melbourne. It'll be fantastic to see you here again.
Yeah, I will look forward to that happening. I'm sure it's
great.
David, thanks for spending some time with us on our little podcast over here in Australia. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Okay, have a good day.
Thanks, David.
David Graham joining us here on Inside the Ropes.
Hi, this is Sherelle McMahon. Swing Fit is the fun, healthy, social way for women to get started in golf. You'll learn the basics of the golf swing and how to putt over a 6-week program, and get your whole body moving through yoga and Pilates-style exercises. You don't need any golf knowledge or equipment. Simply turn up in comfy clothing and get started. You'll be surrounded by like-minded people and receive constant support. So get outdoors, meet new friends, and learn a sport that you can play for the rest of your life. To find a program near you, visit swingfit.com.au.
Hi, it's Stuart Appleby here. With October coming up, it's time to share the golf bug with a friend.
Well, hopefully you enjoyed that as much as we did. And as we said, we could have spent a whole lot longer talking to him. I mean, we probably need to spend more time talking to David.
Yeah, I think that's true. And one of the things about David Graham, we didn't really touch on it, was he's the only Australian male to win 2 separate major championships. So Shark's won a couple of Opens. Peter Thompson's won a couple of Opens. No one else has got the number 2 up yet. He's won the PGA and the US Open, which we did touch on. His story is extraordinary, as we heard, but he's basically, not in a mental sense, he didn't walk away, but he's been removed from Australia for so long, and having spoken to him a little bit before the 100th Australian Open that he referred to, he fears that people don't know who he is and that he's still Australian at heart. He always represents Australia when he gets a chance to tee it up somewhere. I think we'd do a disservice to Australian golf fans if we didn't get him back on at some point, because he's got a huge story that he's desperate to tell, because it's been lost to a generation.
I think we should make a beeline for him when he's going to be out here, obviously on a couple of occasions in the next couple of years.
Yes.
So we should make sure that we get him in here one day and really sit down and get all the things, even if it goes for 2.5 hours, I think just sit down and get all the things that he's got to say recorded, I reckon.
Well, I put it to the listeners as well that if there's stories that you want to hear and people that you think we should get on, be proactive in talking to us about it, because there's so many people that have contributed to the game that, and we haven't done a great job of it necessarily in Australia in acknowledging that, and this is a great forum to do it.
No doubt, it is. Before we tidy up with the other bits and pieces that we want to talk about, Golf Month, Hazy, this has been your baby. You've been all over it, and it's almost upon us.
It is. It's very exciting. October 1, we've talked about this. It seemed a long way away when we started getting into it, but depending on when you're listening, it might already be on. So
true enough.
Check on the website, golfmonth.com.au. Check out with your local clubs about when they're doing something this month. It's not too late to get something organised. But yes, definitely as your point of reference, golfmonth.com.au. We've actually got this is very timely this week, Andy, with the mighty Tigers getting into the AFL Grand Final. We had a great opportunity a week or so ago now, it was before the prelim, to go down and shoot a little video with Jack Revolt down at Albert Park in Melbourne. There's a great video there. He's pumped obviously about Saturday, but he's also pumped about getting out onto the links in a couple of days after that. So
he's spending far too much time on his golf swing on that video. Looks very, very good. I'll put this into perspective in a second, but he crushed it. Like he's shot subpar scores at the National. He's done some fantastic things. He's a really genuinely good golfer. Crushes the ball. We also had Sam Fisher down there, retired St Kilda footballer now. Mate, he hit one over the back fence at Albert Park. It is extraordinary where he hits the ball. If he hadn't sort of toasted his body playing footy and stayed playing golf for South Australia and beyond, he's unbelievable. Good videos there too. Check golfmonth.com.au to see them. And also, don't forget to enter that competition for your chance. There's 4 prizes to win, each for 2 people to fly to King Island and Barnbougle. I'm really getting good at that pronunciation now, Andy. Much better now.
So play Barnbougle, play Lost Farms, Ocean Dunes and Cape Wickham, courtesy of Air Adventure Tours and Golf Australia. All you got to do is tell us who you're going to share the golf bug with this October.
Perfect. That's what you got to do. 2 of those names you mentioned then, Jack Revolt and Sam Fisher, I think I've got committed to having a crack at the longest day. Ali, could you play 72 holes in a day? Will you commit here on Inside the Ropes to doing this and raising money for the Cancer Council of Victoria? Will you do this or not? Or is it, I'm putting it on you right here, right now.
Twing! That was a hamstring.
You can never say, I'll see what my calendar looks like and I'll think about it.
If it fits in, I'd love to do it.
Would you happily?
I could literally do it.
Yep.
I could definitely do it. I think it's a great cause. Completely agree with everyone getting behind it. If you get me a good enough 4-ball, I'm in.
You don't want to do it with 4, I reckon. 3's max. You probably heard me banging on about this, and we obviously the focus on Golf Month because that's here and now, but the longest day is the brainchild of Andrew Buxton and a couple of his mates down at Sorrento. They started doing it a few years ago. They formalised it. Last year we made over $100,000. We really just the tip of the iceberg. We want to raise $250,000 this year, and basically it's to get uncomfortable playing golf. 72 holes in a day, and it's not easy battling cancer. And it's not easy playing 70 holes of golf in a day. So you'd know what you'd rather be doing. And if you're in the sort of nick where you can take on the golf challenge, then go to www.longestday.org.au and commit. Have a go. Speak to your local club about it. I did it last year. I'm doing it again this year with you, Hazy, and it's a remarkably fulfilling thing to do. You don't do it very often. And if you've got the opportunity to do it and your club's happy for you to do it, then go and have a chat to them about it.
Yeah, we're going to do it at Curlewis, which is great. I've had a few people contact me on Twitter about it, Andy, talking about doing it in different states where it's not formalised yet.
You still do it.
But you absolutely can still do it, and you can donate through the Cancer Council of Victoria.
Yep.
A couple of people in Queensland in particular where they've got issues with daylight savings. And don't get me started on that one, Andy, seeing we've been so political earlier on. But I've also heard from a couple of clubs. They'll throw open their gates if you want to tee off at 4 in the morning and get it done by 5 in the afternoon when it starts getting dark, just when people are starting to get up in the southern states. But yes, no, please do it regardless of the formalities of it.
Yep.
And if you need help, reach out to Andy or myself on Twitter, and we'll try and push you in the right direction. Sorry to dob you in, Andy.
No, happy to do it. But I'm happy to do it. But seriously, a lot of your questions will be answered if you go to their website, longestday.org.au. And if you've got, go and speak to your club, because I know I did it last year at my club at Kingswood, and they gave me the red flag, the orange flag, stick it in the bag. Every other player on the course. There's a note on the pro shop desk. You're going to see an orange flag out there. If it comes up behind you, just let them go through. You don't have to run. It's not that bad. You can do it quite easily. I did it with my brother-in-law last year. We had a third player. BA came in and played 18 with us for one, just to break it all up, and it was so much fun. It was so much fun. So have a go if you can. Junior World, we're speaking about the Junior President's Cup.
Yeah.
The Junior Girls World Champs.
This is going to be another thing that's dependent upon when you're listening to us here, but we had a fantastic start yesterday, first morning of this competition in Ottawa in Canada. Gabby Ruffles in particular led the way, 69, put herself in the individual contest and Australia right in the mix in the teams. Unfortunately, probably hasn't been such a great result in the second round, and we've slid down the rankings to tied 15th as we speak here on Thursday morning. Gabby, Eliza Hetherington both shot 76 in the second round, and Steph Kyriakou from St Michael's in Sydney shot a 77. So they're all sort of dropped off the pace in the individual rankings. Australia's still thereabouts, not unsurprisingly, Andy and Ali. The Republic of Korea, 16 under through 2 rounds, a clear-cut leader and giving the United States another hiding in women's golf.
No surprises, really, is it? It's become such a launch pad, I think, the World Juniors, the World Cups of golf, Espirito Santo and so forth, that it's honestly the first look we get at the really good Korean players, I think. And you look at Heo-jin Choi and some of the players that have come through recently, in recent times, they're incredible talents, and it's just going to continue. They're doing all of the right things over there. I mean, we've talked about the KLPGA and their structure in terms of professional golf and amateur golf and the pathways and everything in previous episodes. I won't go into it again, but I'm not very surprised by that at all.
Well, one thing you also won't surprise you, Ali, is, and they're only tied 4th at the moment, they're hot on the heels of the US in terms of a podium finish, is the highly touted Swedish team.
Sweden's got a really good generational wave coming up. They own 6 places of the 12 places on the Junior Solheim Cup team. 6 places.
Six of the 12.
There was not one Brit on the Junior Solheim Cup team, and there were 6 Swedes. And I saw a young girl play last week, Frida Kinhult, who played in the Ladies Spanish Open in Marbella, and she was competing, and she's not on this team, which is terrifying. So, another place to watch coming up through European golf.
That's sister of Marcus, is that right?
Yes.
He's a freak show too. It's great to see Sweden coming through, another small country in terms of population. Awesome.
At the other end of the spectrum, as I said right at the outset, we didn't get to speak about Miyazata. She's kind of got lost in the wake last week, and it's probably meant to be because you know of her contribution to the women's game more than we do. Out of all the things they got wrong at the Evian Championship, they actually got that right, the way they met her on the back of 18, and, it probably got a bit chaotic at the end, really. Just wanted to get her off the back edge of the green, but it was lovely the way players came out, the flowers were there, the celebration there and then for that moment was handled really well. Her contribution to the women's game, Ali, how significant should we see it as being?
I think that I was one of the first players that came on the women's game, specifically out of Japan, but also the way that she played it was quite iconic at the time. She came out with this ridiculously slow, long, archy golf swing. And I think from a technical standpoint, she was the first world number 1 that didn't have the traditional fundamentals of the golf game. But also, she's the godmother of golf, really, in terms of pop culture for Japan. Furthermore, she is an incredible human being. I cannot stress that enough. If you met her on the street, she'd look you in the eye, she'd ask you what you did. She's totally invested in whoever she meets. And
awesome.
I honestly can't speak highly enough of her as a human.
Well, there you go. She'll probably become. She'll go into the Hall of Fame at some stage, will she not?
I think she will.
She's certainly going to be a conversation. She'll be in the conversation when her time's up, obviously, to be announced as, a member of the Hall of Fame. 5 went in this, I think just the 5, was it 5?
Yeah.
Woosie, Ian Woosnam, Davis Love, Meg Mellon, Lorena Ochoa, and the great golf writer Henry Longhurst went in this week. Their deeds speak for themselves, really, don't they?
Lorena's the standout there for me in terms of, quality, comparative quality of golfer, and that's saying something because those others are awesome golfers, but she was a jet of the highest order.
She really was.
She holds the record at the moment still for consecutive weeks at world number 1, 158 weeks at world number 1. And again, the person that goes behind those scores is probably even greater than her 30 tournament wins or 2 majors. So, every now and then I think that they get the perspective right with the Hall of Fame in particular in terms of standing back and looking at contributions to the game. She was one of the first real players from South America to Central America to come through and to kind of be the underdog that didn't fit the mould and be an incredible player on the women's side. I think that's, it's incredible.
I used to be a voting member of that selection panel, Andy, just through my work as a journo. Since that system, since I had my voting rights reneged, which is great, I was fully for it because, who am I? Since it stopped being media-centric voting and therefore, by default, the most power being in the United States in terms of the vote, the inductees into the Hall of Fame have shown a far greater respect to the world as opposed to North America or the United States specifically. I think it's starting to get it right. David Graham's a great example of that. It meant the world to him. Lorena Ochoa she was chuffed. I'm not denigrating any of the Americans who get in there either, but it's starting to actually resemble world golf. Yeah, it's actually legitimate. Which anyone ever gets a chance to go to Jacksonville, it's actually worth a visit. It's not just a Mickey Mouse thing. It's a fantastic display, walk through golfing history. It's really good.
We continue to mention Hannah Green's name because she forces us to. I reckon, 19 episodes in, so 3.5 months ago, I reckon, maybe 4 months ago, Alison Whitaker said, well, none of this surprises me when she had one of her first good results on the Symetra Tour back then. We now know she's secured her LPGA Tour card for next year. Well, she has her 10th top 10 of the season last week. I mean, this girl she's just feeding off her own success at the moment.
She is completely built for professional golf. And I don't mean that lightly because some of the best players in the world that we've seen, particularly come through Australian golf, have been incredible golfers that weren't built for professional golf. There is a mentality that is required on the road, an autonomy that a lot of people don't have, a self-sufficient side of your own golf and self-diagnosis, and she knows her game so well, she knows herself so well, and she's going to do great things. I'm so stoked for her. And again, still not surprised.
Yeah, of course. You wanted to, we're getting close to the end here, you sent a few of us a message last night as a reminder to yourself to make sure that you mentioned Sue Wooster on the way through this today.
Yeah, and it's a name that doesn't crop up, which is, even to me, it's not on my radar all the time, and I apologise for that, Sue, but I needed the reminder just to make sure that it got the mention that it deserved. Sue Wooster, who's a member at the National down in Victoria, she's just had one of the great world tours in senior women's golf. She came off a win at the Canadian Senior Women's Open, which earned her an entry into the US Senior Women's Open. She made it through 2 rounds of match play there, so in the final 16 in the US. And just this week, she's gone and finished second in the British Women's Senior.
Yes,
so
that's great.
A phenomenal achievement for a handicap player. Like, she's not a professional, is what I'm getting at. She's just a real fighting spirit. She's just a beast of an opponent to play, I would imagine. She's got that real guts and determination about her.
Yeah, she's a total rough cut diamond as well. When you're inside Sue's circle, she would literally do anything for you. And I think, again, I always try and put a personal perspective because it's the stuff, you can see scores online and everything and you can understand someone's record. But to understand that she literally would crawl through mud to win this woman. And she's got a beautiful family as well. And her husband, Keith, I know that he's been a massive support to her. So no surprises to see Sue doing great things. I wouldn't be surprised if a really big major senior amateur championship wasn't up for grabs with her because she's a really good player.
I think she's 53, Ali, from memory. And she's also, Andy, the reigning Australian mid-amateur champion, which, I mean, that just takes age groups that are totally out of her sphere.
53 is a new 32, Hazy, so don't go getting disrespectful to the age of 53, my friend.
Well, she's capable of beating 31 and 30-year-olds as well.
There you go. Big week. We've talked about the President's Cup. A lot to look forward to. The British Masters over on the European Tour. The LPGA goes down to New Zealand, which we've got a lot to look forward to. Quality field teeing it up across the ditch, which is good. Web.com tour wraps up, and there's the Taiwan Masters up in Asia we've got to look forward to.
Now, I need to give a special shout-out before we wrap things up. Sarah Kemp, one of our Aussies, and one of our great, generational Aussies, she won the Anita Boone Classic in New Zealand. She won by 4 shots, and I just want to say, on record, finally, oh my gosh, this has been a long time coming for her. I think we expected, so many things when she turned pro. This is a girl that came through amateur golf and didn't have the Golf Australia system that we have now. She didn't have the luxury, neither did Sarah Jane Smith. Those 2 players, I think, had they had the support that Minjee and Suo have had, would have been on a similar trajectory. Big statement, but essentially the program wasn't there for them like it is for the people going forward, and it's great to see her get a win.
She's had a brutal season on the LPGA Tour. I wrote a story about that on golf.org.au a couple of weeks ago. She made her first cut in a long time. So it's really good to see, and she's she's even par late in the first round here in New Zealand today. So hopefully she's found that little extra to kick her on.
Well, from little things, let's hope the words ring true for her. Good to see you again, Alison Whitaker. Nice
good to
have
see
you in the
you
studio.
guys.
It's always fun.
Always a pleasure.
You, Hazy.
I've been sufficiently embarrassed by Ellie, so I think we're done.
Well, you've embarrassed yourself today. Just before we go, it's Thursday and it's 11:15 on Grand Final week here in Melbourne, and it's all black and yellow and black. What is he wearing today?
A lot of brown and yellow. A lot of Hawks gear.
What are you doing?
It's brown and gold, my friend.
Brown and yellow. What are you doing, mate? Come on, let it go.
It looks yellow from here.
It's not about Hawthorn this week,
It's
all right?
Footy Colours Day. I'm not doing it to say